Hello everyone, welcome to part 5 of Scrum Guide explanation video series. In this video, I will be covering the Scrum events. In the previous parts of the Scrum Guide explanation video series, I have covered the Scrum definition, Scrum theory, Scrum pillars, Scrum values and Scrum rules. If you have not been through those videos, I would recommend you to go through it as it will give you better understanding of the Scrum events. And in this video I will cover the Scrum events. So to start with it, the sprint is a container for all other events. Each event in Scrum is a formal opportunity to inspect and adapt Scrum artifacts. These events are specifically designed to enable the transparency required. Now the Scrum framework consists of 5 events, that is that are sprint planning, a daily Scrum, sprint review, and sprint retrospective. And these 4 events are part of the containing event called as the sprint. So as part of the sprint only, all the other 4 events will be held. Now these 4 events, or these 5 events basically, gives the opportunity to the team for enacting the Scrum pillars of inspection, adaptation, and transparency. If you have been through my previous video on the Scrum pillars, I have provided a detailed explanation on how these Scrum events provides the team the opportunity to inspect and adapt. I have also provided detailed explanation on what these Scrum pillars are. So I would recommend you to go through that video to get the detailed understanding. But if you have not been through it, so to give you a quick idea here, I'll give you an example. Let's say during the daily Scrum. So daily Scrum is one of the event, and during the daily Scrum, the team would generally inspect their progress towards the sprint goal, and based upon the challenges they are facing, if they need to adapt any new changes, or if there is any process change or any other technical changes that are required to overcome that challenge, the team will adapt to those changes and start working on it. So based upon their inspection, they are adapting here to move forward with the process, to move forward towards the sprint goal. So that's how the daily Scrum is helping in inspecting and adapting. And the overall process is transparent here because the team is discussing about whatever is the progress and whatever are the challenges are there. So they are within the team, there is a transparency because of which they are able to inspect and adapt. Now similarly, during the sprint review, the team will showcase the work that they have completed or the product increment to the stakeholders, and the stakeholders will inspect that product increment during the sprint review and provide their feedback. So based upon the stakeholder or customer feedback, the team will make the changes or adapt the changes, adjust the changes that are required in the product increment, and they will work upon it in the future sprints. So here again, the the product increment is being made transparent to the business users or the stakeholders, and then the stakeholders are inspecting it and the team is adapting to the changes. So that's how these events are giving the team opportunity to inspect, adapt, and be transparent. Now moving on to the next point, failure to operate any events as prescribed results in lost opportunity to inspect and adapt. So each and every event of the Scrum framework contributes to inspection, adaptation, and the transparency. And in case if any of the event is not held, or the team is not able to operate any of the event due to any reason, then eventually they are losing that opportunity to inspect and adapt. Now events are used in Scrum to create regularity and to minimize the need for meetings not defined in Scrum. Now generally in any product development process, why would the teams will have meetings? The team will meet generally to like have a daily stand up, daily status calls, or to discuss on any challenges if the teams are facing, or to showcase the progress reports to the stakeholders, or if the team has any clarifications they need in terms of the requirements, they will have the clarifications from the business. They'll get that clarifications from either from the business analyst or the product owner or the architects, whoever is present in their team. So to avoid those meetings in Scrum framework, the formal events are there. The formal meetings can be held as part of these events only, and those meetings can be avoided. So that is what is being told here. Scrum, the events used in the Scrum to create regularity. At the regular basis, the teams are having those meetings, those formal meetings, in the form of events only, and it eventually minimizes the need for the meetings not defined in the Scrum. Okay. Optimally, all events are held at the same time and place to reduce complexity. Now, for time optimization, it is recommended that the team should have the meetings at the same time and same place. It will also reduce the complexity. So if the team is co-located, it is better that they meet daily at the same place and same time. Even if they are meeting virtually, so it's better they conduct the meetings at the same time to avoid any confusion, and it will also optimize the time. So that is what the first introduction of the Scrum events is about. Now, to deep dive into what each event in the Scrum framework is, we'll just start with the sprint. The sprints are the heartbeat of Scrum, where ideas are turned into value. They are fixed length events of 1 month or less to create consistency. A new sprint starts immediately after the conclusion of the previous sprint. Now, what is a sprint? Sprint is basically like a mini project of 1 month or less. All the work in Scrum is done as a series of short projects, and this series of short projects are called as sprints basically. And during the sprint, the team members will generally plan, build, and deliver an increment of the product to get the feedback from the stakeholders, and this helps the team to plan for the next sprint. So that is what is being mentioned here, that these are the fixed length events of 1 month or less. Now, how the team will decide how long the sprint should be? So the sprint should be just long enough to deliver a done or usable increment. For each and every team, the sprint length will vary, and they need to decide it based upon their complexity of their product, and but it should be long enough that they should be able to deliver a usable increment to the business users. And a new sprint starts immediately after the conclusion of the previous sprint. So immediately once the one of the sprint gets over, the next sprint will start immediately after that. All the work necessary to achieve the product goal, including the sprint planning, daily scrum, sprint review, and retrospective, happen within the sprint. So as I've already mentioned during the introduction, that as part of a sprint is the containing event, and as part of the sprint only, all the other events will be held. Now, during the sprint, no changes are made that would endanger the sprint goal. Now, there are certain things that the team needs to make sure that is not happening, or the team needs to make sure some of the things during the sprint that are mentioned here. No changes are made that would endanger the sprint goal. So what is the sprint goal basically? A sprint goal is an objective set by the Scrum team during the sprint planning, and it captures the goal that the team wants to achieve during that particular sprint. Although the sprint goal is fixed, the sprint backlog can be changed. So here they are telling that no changes are made that would endanger the sprint goal. It doesn't mean that during the sprint no changes should be made at all. Changes can be made, but those changes should not endanger the sprint goal. because change is nature of agile, and without change agile will not work. So we cannot say that no changes should be made at all during the sprint. There is a chance that the team might learn that technology they picked does not perform as expected, or the key features that are needed to reach the sprint goal was missed during the sprint planning. And so, as the issues emerge, changes to the sprint backlog may be required to reach the sprint goal. So, in short, sprint backlog is flexible as long as the changes do not distract from the focus on the sprint goal. So, changes can be made, but it should not endanger the sprint goal. That is what the first point is about. Now, quality does not decrease. So, during the sprint, the team needs to make sure that they should not compromise on the quality of the product that they are developing. If the developers find that they will not be able to complete all the items selected for the sprint, they may negotiate with the product owner to leave out some of the user stories without affecting the sprint goal. But at no point the team should compromise on the quality. So, for example, that for reaching the sprint goal, if the team wants to save the time by not writing or executing the test cases, so that is not acceptable. The Scrum makes it very clear that quality will not be sacrificed. Instead, if necessary, Scrum sacrifices the scope in order to guarantee quality. So, if the team feels at any point of time they will not be able to reach the goal, this is one of the example that due to any reason, if the team identifies that they'll not be able to complete the item and they want to compromise on the quality, that is not acceptable. Instead, they can work with the PO to reduce on the scope, but whatever they are delivering, it should be of good quality. They should maintain the quality basically. So that is the second point is about. Next one is the product backlog is refined as needed, and okay, that is last one. So the product backlog is refined as needed during the sprint. The product backlog can be refined anytime. The team needs to decide how often and who needs to be involved during the product backlog refinement. And product backlog refinement refers to adding details, estimates, and order to the items in the product backlog. Continuous product backlog refinement is needed within each sprint to keep the items ready for the future sprint. So it is completely a team's decision when and whom they want to involve in the product backlog refinement process, and they can do it during the sprint at any point of time. But it is an important process because it will help to plan the future sprints. Now, scope may be clarified and renegotiated with the product owner as more is learned. Now, product owner have the right to see product as it is being built and make adjustment as needed to better suit the sprint goal. So during the sprint, the developers may identify that one of the product backlog item requires more work than they initially thought. So they can discuss with the product owner about this to try and retain some slices of it in the sprint, and they will still move forward with the sprint goal and cover the others in the future sprints. So if during the sprint, if the team is identifying that some additional tasks need to be added as part of one of the user stories which they initially didn't think of during the sprint planning, and because of this basically some additional work is coming, additional things are coming in the scope of the sprint. So they might need to slice down some of the items which are not of much priority as of now and can be taken up in the future sprints. So that those adjustments can be made along with the PO, and the team can negotiate with the PO on it and work on it. So next is sprints enable predictability by ensuring inspection and adaptation of progress toward a product goal at least every calendar month. So it means your if your team has a 1 month sprint, In such case, at least every 1 month, the stakeholders and team are able to measure the progress towards the product goal, because every 1 month they are inspecting the progress towards the product goal. Whatever functionalities, features, or the product increment that the team has developed during that particular sprint, uh, the stakeholders would inspect that during the sprint review, that is at the end of the sprint. Generally the sprint reviews occur at the end of the sprint, that is the second last day. So if it is a 1 month sprint, towards the end of the sprint, the sprint review will happen. The stakeholders along with the team will inspect the outcome, and based upon the inspection, they would be able to predict whether whether they are moving towards the product goal in the correct direction or not. If there is any deviation, then it can be adjusted in the future sprints. So that's how the sprints are enabling the predictability by ensuring inspection and adaptation. Now, when a sprint's horizon is too long, the sprint goal may become invalid, complexity may rise, and risk may increase. Shorter sprints can be employed to generate more learning cycles and limit risk of cost and effort to a smaller time frame. Each sprint may be considered a short project. So, what this means is keep your planning and building cycles short. Don't plan for more than a month's worth of deliverables, as it increases complexity and risk. And it even provides a bridge of thought towards the project minded to say that each sprint may be considered as a short project here. And that is what is being mentioned in this point. Now, various practices exist to forecast progress, like burn downs, burn ups, or cumulative flows. While proven useful, these do not replace the importance of empiricism. In complex environments, what will happen is unknown. Only what has already happened may be used for forward looking decision making. So, empiricism is the most important practice for the team to embrace during the sprint. There is a lot unknown in the complex environment. By embracing empiricism, your team will learn by doing and will continue to improve as they navigate the complex work. And forward looking decisions can only be made by the Scrum team based on what has already happened. So, as empiricism asserts that knowledge comes from experience. So, based on the experiences of the past sprint, the team would be able to improve in the future sprints. There are various methods that are used in by the Scrum teams, for the forecast progress, like burn down charts, burn up charts, and cumulative flows. But the most important thing they are telling here is empiricism. So teams should always practice this empiricism. They should embrace it during the sprint when while they are working in the Scrum framework. That is what is being mentioned here. Now, a sprint could be cancelled if the sprint goal becomes obsolete. Only the product owner has the authority to cancel the sprint. So, cancelling a sprint is a value based decision that rests with the product owner and is generally called for when the sprint goal becomes obsolete. So, it is completely product owner's decision if the sprint should be cancelled or not, and there could be multiple reasons because of which the sprint could be cancelled. One of the reason could be the product owner decides that he needs more time to verify some assumptions before he wants the Scrum team to continue working on the sprint goal. Or another reason could be due to the operational changes, technical direction toward the sprint goal became obsolete, and the sprint goal is not met. Um, one more reason could be that some of the stakeholders want the team to set a more ambitious goal. So there could be multiple reasons, as I mentioned. Sometimes what happens, the PO decides the team should work on some more important objective. So that could also be one of the reasons. So, but it is completely PO's call whether the sprint should be called off or not. So that is what is mentioned here. Now moving on to the next event, that is sprint planning. Sprint planning initiates the sprint by laying out the work to be performed for the sprint. This resulting plan is created by the collaborative work of the entire Scrum team. So the sprint starts with sprint planning, and during the sprint planning, the entire Scrum team collaborates and discuss the desired high priority work for the sprint and defines the sprint goal. That is what is mentioned here. The product owner ensures that attendees are prepared to discuss the most important product backlog items and how they map to the product goal. The Scrum team may also invite other people to attend sprint planning to provide advice. So the product backlog should be in good shape. It is very important because uh, generally the product backlog should have enough product backlog items, and it should be clearly ordered and should be ready to take up in the sprint. And the PO should be able to explain the team how the sprint could best contribute to the product goal. This helps the Scrum team gain shared understanding, and they commit individually and collectively to reach the sprint goal basically. So if needed, what is mentioned here, like if needed, the developers can invite other people to the sprint planning to help them understand some areas of the work that they need to do. Let's say that if the developers need some help from the architects or the business analysts, they can be invited, even if the product has some integrations with some other tool, and the team wants some clarifications related to those integrations. The other team can be invited during the sprint planning. So it developers can invite them. That is what is mentioned. And as a result of this, what will happen is that the team will feel they have created a good plan to start with, and which in turn increases their confidence in the sprint forecast and commitment to the sprint goal. So and that is what this point is about. Now moving on to the next point here. Sprint planning addresses the following topics. There are three topics which is being addressed in the sprint planning, which is mentioned here. First one is, why is the sprint valuable? The product owner proposes how the product could increase its value and utility in the current sprint. The whole Scrum team then collaborates to define a sprint goal that communicates why the sprint is valuable to stakeholders. The sprint goal must be finalized prior to the end of the sprint planning. So based on the product backlog, the PO makes a proposal to the team about what they can develop that should be valuable for the stakeholders. And in a collaborative manner, the team crafts a sprint goal that indicates why this sprint will bring value to the stakeholders or the customers. That is what is being mentioned here. So basically the team collaborating, and they are deciding what is the value of the sprint, what value this particular sprint is adding to the product goal. Now what can be done this sprint? Through discussions with the product owner, the developers select items from the product backlog to include in the current sprint. The Scrum team may refine these items during this process, which increases understanding and confidence. So the Scrum team anticipates what can be done in the sprint by understanding the sprint goal and collaborating with the product owner. And also they will work on refining the product backlog items during this process, which increases the understanding and confidence of the team. Now selecting how much can be completed within a sprint may be challenging. However, the more the developers know about their past performance, their upcoming capacity, and the definition of done, the more confident they will be in their sprint forecast. So estimation is never a guarantee or commitment. The estimate represents the product backlog items chosen by the Scrum team that they think they can finish by the end of the sprint. So, for estimation, the team can consider their past performance, which refers to the amount of work completed by them in the previous sprint, and it is generally measured in story points. They also call it as velocity. And the team, however, the more the developers know about their past performance, their upcoming also based upon their upcoming capacity. Capacity refers to the time in hours or days that the team is available to work during the sprint. If the capacity is not evaluated correctly, it can lead to incorrect estimation also. So other thing is the definition of done. Now team needs to think on the definition of done also. The definition of done needs to be set to include a higher criteria in terms of quality and spending more time on the quality. So that is also is important. So during the sprint planning, the team needs to set the definition of done as well. Next one is how will the chosen work get done. And the third topic that will be addressed during the sprint planning is this. So for each selected product backlog item, the developers plan the work necessary to create an increment that meets the definition of done. This is often done by decomposing product backlog items into smaller work items of 1 day or less. How this is done is at the sole discretion of the developers. No one else tells them how to turn product backlog items into increments of value. So here the team gets specific about action items now. Now they identify and prioritize the sprint tasks, developing a timeline for the items in the list. Often this means like turning the backlog items into work items that they will work upon during the sprint. And by the end of the event, in the Scrum team, everyone should know like what is the overall sprint goal, and if there are any sub goals, and which backlog items will be the part of the sprint, and who will be responsible for what task. So, and this particular process of decomposing the product backlog item and creating the task is um completely done by the developers, and it is their responsibility. No one tells them how to turn the product backlog items into increment of value. That is also their job. The sprint goal, the product backlog items selected for the sprint plus the plan delivering them together referred to as a sprint backlog. So what is a sprint backlog? Sprint backlog is nothing but the sprint goal plus the product backlog items that are selected for the sprint plus the plan of delivering them. Sprint planning is time boxed to maximum of 8 hours for 1 month sprint. For shorter sprints, the event is usually shorter. So for a 1 month sprint, the sprint planning is time boxed to maximum of 8 hours. Maximum team can conduct the sprint planning for 8 hours for 1 month sprint. And if it is a 2 week sprint, so generally they'll keep it for 4 hours. Moving on to the next event, that is daily scrum. The purpose of the daily scrum is to inspect progress toward the sprint goal and adapt the sprint backlog as necessary, adjusting the upcoming planned work. It is, so what is daily scrum? Daily scrum is one of the scrum events that enables the three pillars of empirical process, transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Because daily scrum allows the developers to touch base or inspect on their progress towards the sprint goal and seek support if any challenges they are facing. Next point is the daily scrum is a 15-minute event for the developers of the scrum team. To reduce complexity, it is held at the same time and same place every working day of the sprint. If the product owner or the scrum master are actively working on items in the sprint backlog, they participate as the developers. So this daily scrum is generally conducted for 15 minutes by the developers, and it is recommended that it should be held at the same time and place And if the product owner or scrum master are actively working on the items in the sprint backlog, they can participate as the developers. So it is the event for the developers. Basically, the scrum master and product owner doesn't have to be there. But in case if the scrum master or the product owner is actively having some item in the sprint backlog on which they are working, and to they want to talk about it during the daily scrum, they can participate in the daily scrum. So we can also say that the daily scrum is an activity for and by the developers. If some in some teams, generally scrum master facilitates this meeting, but it is not the responsibility of the scrum master to conduct the daily scrum. If the scrum master doesn't even have to be there, the scrum master just need to ensure that the team understand the purpose of the event and give them the permission to run the event in whatever way it works for them, and he should step away. The developers can select whatever structure and techniques they want, as long as their daily scrum focuses on the progress towards the sprint goal and produces an actionable plan for the next day of work. This creates focus and improves self management. So that is what is mentioned here, that it is developer event, and developers needs to decide the structure and techniques that they want to follow while conducting the daily scrum. But it should be conducted in a way that it should focus towards the progress towards the sprint goal, and they should be able to produce some actionable plan for the next day of the work. This improves the self management. This showcase that team is self managing if they are able to conduct the daily scrum properly. Now, daily scrums improve communication, identify impediments, promote quick decision making, and consequently eliminate the need for other meetings. So the daily scrum improves communication with the team. It creates a space to share challenges so that the team don't fall through the cracks, and it encourages the team members to ask for support and keep each other in the loop, eliminating the need for any other meetings. Next is the daily scrum is not only time developers are allowed to adjust their plan. They often meet throughout the day for more detailed discussion about adapting or replanning the rest of the sprint's work. So as the daily scrum is time boxed to 15 minutes, it is difficult to discuss each and everything related to the progress towards the goal in within the 15 minutes. That's why it is being mentioned here that this is not the only time where the developers are allowed to meet. They can meet anytime throughout the day, and they can discuss on um, they can have a detailed discussion about adapting or replanning the work. Now, sprint review. Next point is sprint review. The purpose of the sprint review is to inspect the outcome of the sprint and determine future adaptations. The Scrum team presents the results of their work to key stakeholders, and progress toward the product goal is discussed. Now, sprint review is working or collaborative meeting for the Scrum team and stakeholders to inspect progress and adapt plans for the future. During the sprint review, the Scrum team demonstrate the working increments that they have completed during the sprint, allowing the uh, stakeholders to review the progress made. During this event, the Scrum team and stakeholders review what was accomplished in the sprint and what has changed in their environment. Based on this information, attendees collaborate on what to do next. The product backlog may also be adjusted to meet new opportunities. The sprint review is a working session, and the Scrum team should avoid limiting it to the presentation. So, what are they telling here is uh, the during the sprint review, basically the team will cover what new changes they have made in their environment, and the stakeholders will give feedback on the work and engage in the discussion with the Scrum team. This helps the Scrum team understand if they are moving in the right direction and if they need to make any adjustment based on the feedback received from the stakeholders. Then, based on the feedback received from the stakeholder, the PO may need to update the product backlog to reflect any new insights or changes required. So, and collaboratively, the Scrum team and stakeholders will discuss and identify the priorities that needs the priorities and the needs and the changes. This info helps the team with their next sprint planning. So that is what is being mentioned here. One more point is like the sprint review is a working session, and Scrum team should avoid limiting it to the presentation. It is always better that the team showcase the working product, uh, working functionalities or features, whatever they have developed, to the stakeholder instead of showing it with a PowerPoint presentation or any kind of presentation. The sprint review is a second to last event of the sprint, and it is time boxed to a maximum of 4 hours for 1 month sprint. For shorter sprints, the event is usually shorter. So if the sprint is of 1 month, then the sprint review would be conducted maximum for 4 hours, and if it is a 2 week sprint, it would be 2 hours. Basically, sprint review is what a sprint review is. It will encourage the open communication, enabling the team to understand stakeholder expectation and determine the next step towards. So that is what the sprint review is about. Now, moving on to the next event, that is sprint retrospective. The purpose of the sprint retrospective is to plan ways to increase quality and effectiveness. Now, sprint retrospective is the final Scrum event, which is an internal evaluation process that reflects how the work happened and what process could look like going forward. And the Scrum team would inspect how the last sprint went with regard to the individual's interactions, processes, tools, and the definition of done. And inspected element often vary with the domain of work. Assumptions that led them astray are identified and their origins explored. The Scrum teams discusses what went well during the sprint, what problems it encountered, and how those problems were solved. So during the sprint retrospective, what the team will discuss is they will usually discuss on how well the team members interacted and communicated with each other. So they will talk about the individuals and interactions, and if there are any chances of improvement in it, like if there was the transparency between the team members and they were able to communicate their challenges or not, and they were able to help each other or not. So interactions and communications, they will discuss about that. Then if they like if the team members has faced any impediments and how they resolved it, if they resolved it in a better way, or if any in future any improvements are needed, that would be discussed. How well, basically how well the impediments were removed, or is there any chance scope of improvement. Now, another point that would be discussed is if the definition of done still serves them as written, or it needs to be updated. So that is very important point. In every sprint retrospective, this is discussed that if the definition of done for the user stories needs to be updated or not. If there are any improvements on how the team works that can be implemented in the future sprint, it would be discussed. So generally, these are the things that would be discussed during the sprint retrospective, and the Scrum team identifies the most helpful changes to improve its effectiveness. The most impactful improvements are addressed as soon as possible. They may even be added to the sprint backlog for the next sprint. And so what are they telling here is the team should identify which potential improvements would have the biggest impact, and those can become an action item for the next sprint. So they may also lead to adding that action item in the sprint backlog for the next sprint. That is what the point is about. The sprint retrospective concludes the sprint. It is time boxed to maximum of 3 hours for 1 month sprint. For shorter sprints, the event is usually shorter. So uh, if the sprint is of 1 month, then the sprint retrospective can be conducted maximum for 3 years. And for the 2 weeks sprint, it can be of 1 hour. So that is what the sprint retrospective event is about. Now in the next video I will be covering the Scrum artifacts, which is the last topic of the Scrum guide. And if you have any doubts, questions, feedback, please let me know in the comments section. And yeah, that's it for this video, and thank you for watching.